Let me ask you a question. What happens when you balance your finances, career, and your well-being? There's no limit to what you can achieve. I'm Jalen Vickery, your host and guide on how to build wealth with wellness. Living in a world of information overload and misleading highlight reels, Finance, Fitness, Finesse is a podcast to help you realize you're not woke, you're broke, and how to change that in your favor. If you're looking to elevate your wealth, well-being, and discover the power of balance, tune in to learn why money matters, but wellness counts.
When you go to engage with life and make a life plan, think about it through the lens of what's a challenge, what's a problem, what's a pain point that I love? What's a problem I can fall in love with?
Hey Finessers! Welcome to another episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse, where we build your dimensional wealth with wellness. I'm your host, JaeVic, and thank you for joining me for the Savvy Scholar, where industry experts share their insights on building wealth, managing stress, and living a balanced life. Before we get started, help your lifelong learner community grow, and please leave a rate and review for the show on the homepage. Your feedback is highly favored. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest who's going to help us learn how to cultivate growth and resilience. In this two-part episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse, I sit down with Savvy Scholar Christopher Watkins, also known as CJ, to explore how to diversify your knowledge portfolio. CJ brings a wealth of insight into the psychology behind executive functioning, breaking down goal-setting pain points, and easing the fear of failure with compassionate accountability. I'm excited to have CJ here to share how approaching problems like a scientist can pave the way for personal growth and lasting success. Alright, let's get into it. What is your earliest money memory or a memory where your relationship with money changed?
Great question. I'll go from the gut here. Back in the old days, there was these boombox speaker things that there was a center console and it had a 5 CD changer and then these big giant speakers that could attach to it. And I was probably 5th grade, 6th grade. And that was like a Cadillac to me. If I had one of those, I'm set. I'm good. I can jam out. The ladies will love me. It'll be great. I'll be the coolest kid on the block. I got it. And I went to my parents and, I asked, and at that time we weren't, there wasn't a ton of money around, but, we weren't hurting or nothing. But that was the first time my dad especially challenged me to save for something, to really just earn my own purchasing power, which I previously foreign to. So he challenged me, took me a whole summer of a lot of different chores and odd jobs. I did stuff around the house, did a little bit of the entrepreneurial thing, odd jobs. And he did it right because it was half. He would match. He said if I got half, he'd match. And that made it the number not so insurmountable. And I distinctly remember I hit the number. We went and purchased it. I picked the one I wanted from Best Buy. We got it home, got it up on the wall. My dad even put it on a shelf, kind of a centerpiece. Ironically, one day as I was leaving my room in 6th grade, that shelf failed and the speakers practically attacked me. And I got a big dent in one of the speakers. Still worked.
Oh,
though. No. Yeah, no, it was a wild. It was a lesson, and also always tie your shelves into the stud. Don't rely on wall anchors. It's a bad idea. So lots of lessons back in that one, but that was the first time I realized savings power, that delayed gratification, which is a learned skill. Us humans love instant gratification. So yeah, that's my best one.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm glad you just took that from the gut, and so many lessons learned, and just something that may seem simple now, like a boombox, but back then, that's a big goal to work towards. And your dad kind of introduced the company match mentality there too.
Yes, unknowingly so. My dad, I give him, both my parents were this way. They did some of the stuff that's today we would tout as evidence-based or best practices for parenting, all of it now verified by a lot of psychological study. They were doing it from the gut, just kind of again, we're trying things and seeing what works. I give my parents major credit for that. They knew the basics and the principles and stuck to those. And for the most part, it gave me a lot of really great lessons growing up.
That's great to hear. It's definitely a blessing and a wonderful asset in your life, not only in just your development, but you are an educator, which is super amazing because lifelong learners who bring others with them is so much more needed in our culture, our society. I kind of love that how you grew up. It sounds like it has trickled into your passions and your work today.
Yeah, it has. Again, I don't know why this keeps going back to my parents. I don't know. It feels like it's like a therapy session or something. No, but I it's interesting. My dad and my mom they were the best teachers I know of where they would model what to do. They were the worst explicit teachers. So it's kind of ironic because I ended up getting an education, at least on the front end of it, for what you'd call explicit education. I have a lesson, I have a content, I have a goal. I'm going to explicitly teach these things. Let's get from point A to point B, where interestingly enough, the best way to teach things is often modeling. What we see is generally what we do. And my parents, without trying, modeled a lot of great things for me that I just picked up by osmosis. And it's funny, I had to come full circle because you go through a pedagogy program and a lot of other theoretical teaching programs, and they give you some great stuff on how to explicitly teach things or break down complex concepts. And there's a time and a place for that. And then there is the next level, we're talking Yoda level teachers that I have seen. I will not claim I'm one of these. I aspire to these where not only is the explicit teaching element there, but it's done seamlessly and it's integrated with modeling. Now it's a lot of I am modeling what I want you to do. Kids generally will pick that stuff up, either from education or in parenting. And so I give my parents credit for always talking the talk, but also walking the walk. That is what really inspired me in a direction of education.
It's interesting to think about that concept of having the opportunity to observe and have it be a safe space to observe your parents talking the talk and walking the walk. Because in many different family dynamics, sometimes parents don't really show their kids a lot about how they move throughout their days or the adaptability component that's required no matter what age that you're at. As you were talking there, I was also thinking about the different learning styles that everybody can have. I am a visual learner. If I see you do something, even just a math problem, I can work through it too. Obviously, there's the verbal component as well. In your experience as an educator, how have you worked with students to remain adaptable when they may have a diverse learning style?
Well, the good news is I've been taught by experience, not so much theoretical pedagogy stuff, pretty well because I work at a place called Fusion Academy. So it is kind of just more serendipity. I ended up in this. It's a private school, but it's it's an alternative education path for people who do often think very differently. And the reason it's very different is it's a one-to-one education model. Everything's very custom built. There is a lot of luxuries in that resource and in that model, obviously. But the big challenge, what you trade in, say, volume, say at a public school where there are a lot of kids and a bigger concern there is class management in addition to doling out to large groups education. What you trade in there, what you get back is extreme rapport-based education with people who are very different and diverse learners. They think differently, they process differently. They might have processing issues because of some sort of baggage with education or baggage outside of education. It could be anything. So over time, you go through very complex lessons and it always comes back to simplicity. So it's whatever you can do to help someone authentically understand that you care. As long as they know that you do, the reception, what you get through, what lands, what they're willing to try for you and be okay with failure, all that stuff, that's best practice for education, all generally falls into place. And so really it all comes down to that whatever tools, whatever things you have that can generate good connection with somebody, a student generally. Once they know that, once they have that, even on a basic level, it doesn't have to be super deep. It's not like you got to be their best mentor they've ever had or anything like that. All the rest of it tends to fall into place. So I learned over time to work with and meet people where they're at as diverse learners, invest way more of your resources and time into good, genuine rapport building, and then that smooths the road for all other things.
That connection piece is so critical, not only in the educational space, but also beyond that. I've seen a lot, in my work as a therapist, and also I worked for almost a year with a second grade class as a behavioral teacher's aide. And some of those students you could tell were just craving connection, craving being acknowledged. I understand in certain school environments, it's not always realistic for a teacher to work one-on-one with 30 second graders in her class. It's not always possible, but if there are different processes and structures put in place to make sure the kids feel heard and that they matter, that I'm actually here to connect with you. It sounds like it can almost unlock something psychologically for the student, no matter what age, to really turn their eyes and ears on to the information you're trying to help them understand by making sure they know, hey, like, I see you, I hear you, I know this is hard, but we can work with you on this. So Fusion sounds like a really unique model. I honestly haven't heard of too many schools that do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously that generally is our corner. But to go back to what you just said, there was a small thing there you said that's like so crucial. I know this is hard. The thing that we all ultimately know, if you even think for a second about anything you've ever tried to learn that was new, it is an inherently painful process. Very little learning is just like pure joy and it all went smooth and I mastered it no problem. That's just not the typical experience. And that's okay. Like learning, according to everything we know from psychological studies, is supposed to be effortful. It's supposed to be a little bit difficult. You're supposed to be going just beyond what you know. So it's built in, it's baked in. There's going to be this friction, this cognitive friction. When they feel heard, when they know at least in some way that you care. Like I noticed a marked difference when I was more in public schools, that the faster you got their names down, the better. Even just hearing your own name perks you up. You like hearing it. People generally, it's not because everyone's like selfish. It's just like it's a psychological thing. From that to like the extreme connections that we have the luxury of having here, within this model, it just opens doors. It brings down that fight or flight response. It helps prime the road and kind of pause for a second. If they hit a difficult spot, they can get vulnerable with you and like say, I'm stuck. I don't know what this means, because that's an inherent thing that doesn't feel good. When you're the teacher, it's so easy to forget what it feels like to say, I don't know. It sucks when you have to say, I don't know. It hurts. It's like I have a knowledge gap. I don't know what this means. There's this thing called the Pareto principle. It's, the 80-20 rule. So it's like 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. It's this tiny little thing. It's like this high leverage thing that you can concentrate on that's going to open many of the doors. I think rapport building, whatever that looks like, and you got to scale it to whatever system you're within. There's constraints to everything. That makes the difference. I think that makes a huge, huge difference. And I found that to be true in coaching, in working with others, working with my peers, everything. It permeated everything. Once I learned it in my teaching, it made sense everywhere else.
I couldn't agree more. Whether you're a therapist or a teacher or just looking to be a mentor or just a good person in whatever relationship you have, finding comfort in the uncomfortable that comes with growth and potential confrontation or difficult conversations when something's really hard, it's not easy. If you're looking to really elevate yourself and your community beyond what is already known, what is already probably making you uncomfortable, like with things being difficult, that's where real change happens. And I'm actually wondering if you can walk us through the compassionate accountability concept that I found as I was, researching you a bit. I hadn't really heard that said before or like stated straightforward, like compassionate accountability. I was like, I wonder what goes along with that.
Yeah, I'm sure someone has coined it or said it or done it. I've seen it as a practice in many different forms. I've seen it from educators. I have seen it from therapists. I now have the pleasure of rubbing shoulders with and getting to know a lot more in the mental health community. I've investigated lightly on things like motivational interviewing. And it's like, it just kept coming up. It was a pattern that once you start to notice, it's hard to unnotice. Yeah, compassionate accountability. In a nutshell, it is once you have the rapport established, so they, again, know at a baseline that you're doing this out of care. You're not there to torture them. You're not on a power trip. You're not there to butt heads. You're not doing this because you have to. You're just there because you care. Then it becomes a dance. Then it becomes this, how do I hold you accountable in a way that won't cause the defenses to come up every time, but also still hold your feet to the fire at the right times. Okay, it's getting uncomfortable, but that's because you're pushing for growth. And this is a good discomfort. There's something called stress versus eustress. Distress is bad, whereas eustress is that like, I'm growing. This really hurts my fingers to play this guitar, this new thing, this new lick I've got, but that's what's supposed to happen because I'm learning. When you get to that territory, that's where the compassionate accountability sort of steps in. It's kind of a philosophy, as a practice, as everything else. One tactic I found over the years is I'd be on the outside looking in and I'd work one-to-one with, say, a student, and it was pretty clear that they should probably have a goal around time management or a to-do list or a planner of some kind, anything. The tools aren't so important as much as the principle. So on the outside, I'd see that, and then I'd explicitly tell them that. What I was essentially doing was robbing them of any kind of goal-making process. And I'm on the outside telling them, this is what I think you should do, you need to do. And now I'm just another adult preaching at them, or if it was even a peer, that's another person telling them what they should do. And people don't like to be told to change. But what then I found was better was to take a much longer time on the front end to, again, get to know them, start to pick out maybe some themes I hear or some pain points that they articulate themselves. And most of the time, they'd start to reveal time management is a pain point. They would do that organically on their own. And sometimes it was out of like, my parents give me a hard time because I don't know what I'm doing with my time, or I never have a to-do list. Or again, when I worked with more older clients, it's like, I just feel like I'm always a mess. I don't know what to do. Once that's revealed, then you start to work that point. You hone in and you start to say, okay, well, what would it look like if failure was not an option? You could totally do this perfect. What would that look like? And so you start to kind of paint more of an ideal picture. And now you're going into goal construction, but it's goal construction coming from them. You're trying to prompt the thinking from them. And then once they articulate a goal, now in my accountability, I'm going to play messenger from past them to future them. And by that, I mean, let's say a month later, we're facing a mess, to-do list is on fire, whatever. I will have jotted down or kept somewhere or whatever, pretty clearly what they said they wanted for themselves. And at the right moment, I kindly bring those words back up. So while I am kind of holding them accountable, I'm really just reminding them of their own words, of their own goals. And the way that lands versus, hey, I told you you should have got a planner a month ago, and you still don't have one, so why are we in this mess? Versus, hey, remember when we talked about you hate it when you feel like it's a mess? And you had said you were going to try to keep a weekly to-do list. How's that going? Like, where are we at with that? No judgment if you haven't done it at all. That's just a data point. Let's talk about that. And that's easing their relationship with failure. But again, that's me being a messenger from past them to them sitting right then and there. That lands 95% of the time far, far better. Like now it's not a power struggle. It's okay, I need to revisit what I wanted more for myself. I'm just more or less acting as the messenger there. So that's like an element of compassion and accountability that works well with people.
Yeah, CJ, there's like so much to unpack there about how effective that communication style is. I mean, some of the things I picked up was, number one, how can I help this person develop a vision, see what they're visualizing for themselves rather than start preaching solutions? I actually just was having a conversation with someone the other day about sell the problem, don't just throw up solutions in someone's face of being like, hey, if you did this, 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 and this, you would be better. It not only is really just reminding them of the shortcomings that they already probably recognize within themselves, and it doesn't feel very good for someone else to just come at I mean, even though you might be out of their best interests, helping them verbalize the challenges, develop the goals. What is my vision? What do I want? And then later, the fact that you go back and you're like, okay, that, we're talking about some barriers here and you're continuing to have these barriers, you're reminding them of a previous conversation. So not only it's accountability, but it's also back to that acknowledgement piece that I heard you. I was listening, actively listening while we were talking together. And that's such a lost art. Even like with friends, we had talked about CJ in one of our previous meetings about how having a group of people that you can bounce ideas off of is so critical to just thought generation and the development of your vision. I mean, ever since we've spoken about that, I was like, hey, CJ is a part of my idea generation team. Who else can I add to that so that I can really develop these ideas I have for myself? And it also just produces so much passion and energy. It's a contagious environment for sure.
You get two energizers in a room and even one of them is jazzed about an idea, and you start to kind of ping pong that. Then it's, idea generation. You got to prime it. It's got to be a good relationship. It's got to be the right environment. You got to have that brain trust, like you were talking about. I got to ask you, my points of vulnerability that come up often with coaching clients and then students and everything else is always usually around personal goals, personal improvement, which is a bigger umbrella that can take many different forms. And sometimes it's like an obligatory education path that's like, I know this is a key to something bigger. I've hit a friction point. This is the hurdle that's stopping me from getting what I want. You're touching on something that is probably of the most vulnerable thing ever. Money. That is a thing. It's taboo. Adults don't talk about it. There's married couples that go a long time that just don't even talk about it. So it's like, I just have to ask for you, as you've leaned into this, you practice this, you get to know more people. Like, what was the turning point for you where you made that realization where it's like, this is more about guiding them to their own, through their own points of vulnerability, to their own solutions. I can know all day long, A to Z, likely a whole lot of really great financial literacy 101 concepts, and I could spout them. I could give you a lecture on them. But what was your turning point in trying to help elicit their own thinking on that, or leading them to that on their own terms?
Well, this is a great question. I appreciate you asking it. I'm going to work to keep it as concise because I can get pretty animated when I talk about this stuff.
I love it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I would say my turning point was graduating. I worked at a bank for a year and I worked in the customer service department. I had people calling in from all ages. I talked to a guy born in 1925 all the way up to some kid born in 2015. And across that span, everybody was stressed about their money. I mean, not every caller, but the general consensus was, how do I strategize with overdraft? Calling in freaked out. That's how I really learned how to effectively talk to people who were angry, anxious, terrified about their money, and talking to them in a way that they could really understand. So, as I continued down my track of becoming a therapist, I knew I wanted to work with all different demographics of people, but I was just like, there has to be something more than just sitting down with someone and talking about their problems. And a lot of stuff is relational, along with me just being a broke college kid myself and seeing myself and my friends be very stressed about money. That's where I was like, okay, money touches everything. It touches every single dimension of your life. I've been really working on developing my passion and purpose, which is helping others build wealth with wellness. I'm a huge advocate for dimensional wealth, not just financial wealth or being rich, but how can I find abundance in every single aspect of my life? And finding security in your financial identity can really help people be able to freely navigate the other challenges in life. No matter what age you are, we're moving throughout our days, we're presented with these problems, but we don't really see where the underlying issue is in the labyrinth that is your life. Where is everything trickling and connecting? So it's really interesting to talk about, like right now I'm primarily a therapist at an eating disorder clinic. Of course, with my financial therapy-based brain, I do work with my clients when I hear something in their voice or there's a topic that's hinting at financial strain, especially surrounding their eating disorder. I take the time to help them connect those things. And I've had clients say, wow, I've never had a therapist talk to me about how money can be related to this. Because even therapists might be scared to talk about it. It's like such a no topic for many people.
And it's a shame, I get why it's a taboo subject because it's so vulnerable, but if we could get everybody on the same wavelength to treat it less taboo, probably a lot of people would be better off. At the very least, some empathetic connections of like, oh, you struggle with it too. Great. I thought you had it all together. And then the other part of just like the lessons learned from serendipitous conversation about those things. I'm pretty open with my friends about it and stuff like that. But not all of my friends are, some are a little jarred by that. And I'm like, you reveal what you want. It's all good. I'll openly talk about these things. To go back to what you just said too, another thing that triggered for me, I'm a huge fan of Charlie Munger's idea of lattice work of mental models. If you want to be the sharpest one in any given situation, consistently and constantly, lifelong, learn, read, and acquire mental models, different ways of seeing things, filters through which you will see issues, challenges, whatever. And the more you've got, the better off you are. Obviously, that's a skill too, to be able to switch through those mental models. You just named two really amazing ones right there. Like if it's a Venn diagram and you're looking at the shaded area, you've got your lens as a therapist, but you've got your lens as, what was once a customer service representative in a bank, a central place of wealth, all people kind of have to report to, who were in deeply vulnerable states. And by experience, you learned how to speak about this very vulnerable subject, which brought your focus to it. You're now very, very studied up on it and continue to do so. So now you have these two mental models through which you can see, and you're picking different parts of like, okay, where do I want to approach this? Which gives you this wonderful, unique skill set. That's how you do it. I mean, as far as helping, I'm always thinking about helping people. That's how you do it. Like, that's a really cool thing that it's like, oh, I've never had these two things combined for me. I'm going through a therapeutic thing right now, but also getting some financial advice. This is wonderful.
I appreciate that, CJ. I appreciate that. And I love that you picked up on it and were able to
conceptualize the frames and models of thinking that I've developed through my experiences. Man, CJ, I can't even tell you. With my student athlete experience, it was wonderful, but we were very much in a bubble. And I committed to play softball at U of I when I was 15, like many other of my peers. Like, we were committing early.
Wow.
And my life was sports and softball. My parents exposed me to a lot of things so I could, find different interests. But regardless, went to school. My focus was getting great grades, but also hitting, a ball with a stick. And I changed my major after COVID. Like, I'm really getting at how difficult it was being 18 and then like choose your major and then this is your career and you're going to get the degree and you're going to have a family and then there's your life, there's happiness. And as simple as that is, it was almost overwhelming because it felt like I had to work so hard to try and find something that really made my mind effortlessly work because I was so interested in it. And I couldn't find it until I allowed myself to just continue to accumulate life experience. It was when I was actually training for my marathon, doing all those long running workouts that
A lot of time to think.
long time to think, start listening to podcasts. And that's when that idea started to formulate. And I was like, wait a second, is financial therapy a thing? I can't say I was super patient because I was like, Jay, why aren't you passionate about anything? But allowing it to naturally come post-graduation did help a lot. And CJ, from what I've read about you, like, you've gone through different things with your education. You're going back to school to keep learning things. I mean, What has it been like for you since graduating? Like, can you just break down what it's like to discover passion and purpose?
My turn to try and keep it as concise as possible because boy, oh boy, is it a messy path. That's a great question. It came down to this.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse. A big thank you to CJ Watkins for sharing his journey and expertise with us. Remember, dimensional wealth is key to building a better future. And with community leaders like CJ, we're one step closer to a financially empowered society. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2. If you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you did, help me learn with you and be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. You can find where to contact me in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you guys. And please stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to build your dimensional wealth and wellness. I'm JaeVic, and please don't act woke and be broke. Stay savvy, and if you don't know, now you know. Disclaimer, this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or mental health advice. Always seek professional guidance tailored to your personal needs.